This is Gemara in Nazir Daf Gimel. Nope. Gemara in Sotah Daf Gimel. Baruch Hashem. We are within a new Masechta over here. Mazel Tov again to everyone on completing Nazir. We're holding on Sotah Daf Beis Mebeis. 3 lines into the white lines. We pulled up a little bit short. Siyata Dishmaya will make it up in the next day or so. Today's share has been dedicated by a long-time member of the Daf as a Schos Aliyas Neshama for Miriam Bas Eliezer HaKoyen, whose yahrzeit is tomorrow, Yud Aleph Nisan. So Siyata Dishmaya, the learning of today, Yud Nisan, the day of Shabbos HaGadol, the day that was the original Shabbos HaGadol, should bring Miriam Bas Eliezer HaKoyen an incredible Aliyas Neshama higher and higher in Gan Eden Shalmaila. So 3 lines down. Gimel Beizim and Beis says the Gemara Masnisan D'lai Kaitana. The Mishnah is not like the following Tana. We're discussing the sheet of Rav Eliezer that said in order to have a proper kinui, a proper warning, you need 2 eidim. But to say that there was a stira, 1 aid or the husband would suffice. Titania, we learned in a brayso. Rav Yehuda Aimer Misham Rav Eliezer. So we have a brayso saying the opinion of Rav Eliezer. We're now going to prove how this is not like the Rav Eliezer that was said in our Mishnah. Hamekane leishtai. When someone does kinui warning, mekane al pi eid echadai al pi atzmai. Clearly not like our Mishnah. Mishnah said the kinui and the drink has to be with 2 eidim. Continues this brayso of Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav Eliezer. Umashke lo bishnayim, and she's given to drink al bishnayim via 2 witnesses. So we see clearly not like our Mishnah, and this brayso concludes that Yeshiva Chacham Rav Yehuda. The Chachamim responded, Ein lidvar soif. The way that you're learning Rav Yehuda, there's no end to the matter. Now, what exactly that means, Ein lidvar soif, Mirz Hashem, we'll get to in a moment. But first, says the Gemara, my time Rav Yehuda, where do we get this din that the kinoi is with 1 aid and the eventual drinking is with 2 aidim? Amar Kra Ba, Bavalei Bestira, says the Torah Ba, that's when there are no witnesses. Ve'ein eid ba, which we learned extensively yesterday, means there are not 2 witnesses, but there is 1. That's with regard to the stira, the seclusion. Ask the Gemara, like we saw yesterday, ve'ema ba v'loi bekinui. Kini eskish l'tama, kini is put next to tama, the actual act of defilement. Kini es ishtai v'nitma. Ask the Gemara, what do you mean? Stira nami eskish l'tama, v'nitma. Answers the Gemara, no. That stira that's put next to the toma, ha'u lekama shir stira kidei tuma huda. So that's going to teach us the length of time of the stira of the confinement of the act of the 2 people being together is the length to do tuma, to have an actual ma'isa tashmish, which tomorrow's daf will teach us how long that is. So that is the brayso, which does not concur to the opinion of our Mishnah and the source therein. Asks the Gemara, Yeshiva Chacham Devar Rav Yehuda in the Davar Saif. The brayso concluded that the Chachamim taught Rav Yehuda you have no end. Ma'inihu, what do you mean? What's the problem with the way that Rav Yehuda is learning the name of Rav Eliezer? That 1 aid or the person himself is enough for the kinoi, whereas for the stira, you're going to need 2 aidim. Explains the Gemara, you know what the problem is? There are going to be times that really even 1 aid, even the person himself did not do a kinoi, did not do a warning. And he's going to claim falsely, kanai. He's going to claim falsely that he did warn, and therefore ain't the davar saif, because anyone can make up such a story. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. Our Mishnah does have an end. We could ask the same question. There are times that there's not going to really be a seclusion. V'amar, and I'll make up his stater, meaning any time you believe one person or the person himself, why are we now worried for the same in the davar saif that the person is going to make it up? So now says the Gemara, no, you're right. The Mishnah is a kasha also. Even Rav Yehuda doesn't have an end. The Mishnah has no end. We have a problem. The person can make it up. And as well, Rav Yehuda. Ask the Gemara, Af l'divrei Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda of Loimi Bayil Mishnah Seinu. What does af mean? That the case in the Mishnah, the fact that the Mishnah is shver, the fact that the Mishnah one can make up, that's pashit. And even Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda, but ask the Gemara, that's not true. Misvara Adarabba Mishnah Seinu Ika Ikar. In the Mishnah, there's an ikar. There's already something to suspect. Because there were two Eidim that said that there was a warning. And only afterwards, he potentially can make up about the stira. Whereas Hasam like Ikr, in the case of Rav Yehuda and the price, is nothing at all. He can make up the whole story. So which one is more of an Ein L'Davar Seif? Not the Mishnah, the Brisa. Says Gemara, you're right. We have to learn as follows. According to Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda, Af lemishnah seinu ein ledavar seif. Meaning, Rav Yehuda was concerned that one could make up a story, and as well a similar concern, you're right, not as pashit, would exist in the Mishnah as well. We continue 8 lines to the bottom. First one line is Saif Amar Rav Chanina Meisuria. Now that we're learning that there is a potential issue that one can make up in different scenarios, says Rav Chanina, and nowadays, and this is a rule brought down all the way to Shulchan Aruch, no one should ever tell his wife, never say, don't be secluded with a certain man. Why not? Because perhaps we pass like Rav Yehuda that the kinoi, the warning, could be affected by himself, and then he's going to be, and then maybe she's going to go and be secluded with that guy. And there's no Meisaita nowadays, so she's going to go. Maybe she did nothing wrong, and then she's going to become Aser La Luye, and she's going to become Aser Yisrael de La Eilam. She'll be Aser, so no one should ever warn their wife, don't be with a certain man. Just to point out, 1 second, how is she allowed to be secluded? What happened to the Isser Yichud? How is she allowed to be secluded with another man? So the many answers, obviously Yichud is one of our favorite topics, as we wrote a book on it. But the simple answer is that any case of a Baila Be'ir, there's no Isser Yichud. So it could be that her husband was in the city, and therefore she was allowed to be secluded with this man, and she didn't do an Aveira at all. Amar Reish Lakish. And now we begin a new Gemara. Yes, we are 7 minutes in. Yes, this is really, we should have stopped yesterday. But B'siyata D'Shmaya, we will pick up pace and we will get there. Amar Reish Lakish, 5 lines on the bottom, basement base. My Lashon Kinoi. What does the word Kinoi mean? We know it means warning. But where does that root? What's the root of the word? Davar Hamatil Kina Beinol Ben Achirim. Something that places Kina. Something that places anger and jealousy between her and other people. Why? So Alma Kasavar. What does Reish Lakish Kina Alpi Atmi? You can warn by yourself. So the husband on his own goes to his wife, says, never be secluded with a certain man. And then, no one knows about this warning because the husband just did it on his own to his wife. And then people are going to think, what's going on with this woman? Why is she not hanging out with anyone else in society? And they're going to come to be angry with her. So Reish Lakish holds that because a kinoi, a warning, can be done by one person, the word kinoi comes from the root of anger. There can be an anger between her and other people, and they don't know that the reason why she's separating from the world is because of her husband's warning, and they're going to come to dislike her. 3 lines at the bottom. No. You know what the word kinoi means? It places anger between him and her, husband and wife. Why? Because he's holding that in order to effect a proper kiniyah, proper warning, you need 2 witnesses. On the last line, everyone knows the kani law. Everyone knows that the husband warned her. And she, and she is going to be quite upset with her husband that everyone is talking about the fact that she was warned not to go into seclusion, and therefore that's where the second opinion of Yemer Bar Shalma and Mishmei Abaye holds that the kinui must be with 2 people. We turn over to Gimel and Aleph, and the Gemara continues, and the Gemara talks about kinui, about warning husband to wife. Alma Kasavri, we see from the aforementioned discussion, De'asar Liknois, that it's forbidden for one to warn his wife to be with another man. Uman Damar Motor Liknois, and the one who says you're able to warn his wife. Mahu lashon kinoi. Both Reish Lakish and Rav Yemer Rav Shalmai obviously hold it's forbidden. We see it creates anger, it creates animosity, and therefore it is forbidden to create such a situation. So ask the Gemara, there is a mandamar that holds you are allowed to warn. So what does that mandamar hold? The word kinoi means clearly not like Reish Lakish nor like Rav Yemer Rav Shalmai. Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, note where kinoi means Rav Yitzchak ein kinoi lashon hasra, like we explained in the Mishnah, means simply warning. And he brings a raya v'kan Hashem la'artzai, says the pasuk Hashem will give a warning to his land. So that mandamar that says you're allowed to be mekana, you're allowed to create a warning, holds that the word kinoi means simply a warning. Continues the Gemara into getting into a little bit of the Agadata of Sotah. 4 lines down, Gimel Amar Aleph, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa. Person does an Avera in private. Hashem announces to the whole world due to the favor that he did. What happens? And a spirit of jealousy passes by him. And the word Avera means to announce. So we see that he did a minor Avera, and eventually everyone finds out about it as it is announced to the public. Reish Lakish Amar says, Reish Lakish Amar Avera Elamkin Nichlas by Ruach Shtos. He says, we learn from this pasuk, Va'avar alav Ruach Kina, that when there's a Ruach Kina, when there's a Ruach Shtos, when there's a foolish spirit that enters into a person, that's what causes him to commit a crime, to do a sin. Shenamar Ish, as the pasuk says, any man, kisista ishtai, that his wife shall go astray. Tishta ksiv. Tishta. Now the word tishta, well, literally, the pasuk is read kisista, but we're darshaning that the word sista means like shtos, means acting foolishly, and that's what causes one to do an avera when this ruach shtos enters inside of him. Now we roll the clock back to yesterday's daf, continuing the discussion of how many edim are there necessary to attest to the fact that the woman actually committed the crime, that she was in seclusion and she did the Maisa Aveira. So Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael, says Rabbi Yishmael, what is the reason? That the Torah allows the credibility to one aid. Like we learned yesterday, that the word aid means two. There's not two aid, there's one aid. That everyone agrees that there's a believability to one aid with regard to halachas of Sotah. Ask Rabbi Yishmael, what's the reason? 15 lines down, the first one in line is Sharaglayim, and he explains, Sharaglayim ledavar, because his legs for the matter, because it seems that it's true. Why? Sharikina lav in Istara, because there was a kina, there was a warning, vin Istara, and then there was a seclusion. And now, so now the Eidos, the testimony of a singular witness, is more of a credibility due to the entire story that there already was a kinoi and a stira. So clearly the Gemara now is holding, at what level is this Eid Echad believed when there is a kinoi and a stira prior? So Amrle Rabba Labayo, says Rabba Tabayo, Vaki Ksiva kinoi, Baser stira v'tamud ksiva. When the Torah said kinoi, the wording, it was after the stira and the tama. Whereas what we just learned is that there's only eidas on the tama if there was already a kini and the stira. So Amar Lei, so Abaye responds, Va'avar, the word Va'avar ukvar avar means it already happened. Says the Gemara, 1 second. If you're translating the word Va'avar in the past, Alamayata, Va'avar lachem kol chalutz, the pasuk says every man should pass through the Yarden. But b'nei Gad b'nei Menashe, Chati b'nei Gad b'nei Reuven b'nei Menashe, Achinami. Are you going to tell me the same thing that means in the past? It can't be, because in the storyline it didn't happen that way. Answers the Gemara, you're right. That it's going in the future. Whereas Elahacha by us is Agadaita Kedekasivi, Vavar Basatomo Stira, Kinoi Lamali, what would you need? Where would the Kinoi be? So it must be that the context shows us that it says Ruach of Kino is Avar Alav, it means beforehand. So the Gemara is answering is that this word Va'ava really could be used both ways. And based on the context is that which will determine in what way to translate this word. We continue. Tana devei Rabbi Yishmael. We're about 20 lines down. The first word in line is Lamali. Ein adam mekana leishal kim dechs by ruach. We a moment ago Reish Lakish taught us that one does not create the warning unless there's a ruach of shtos. Says Rabbi Yishmael, kim dechs by ruach, a spirit. Shenemar, spirit from above. Shenemar, the pasuk says, that what's going to happen, a spirit of jealousy passes over him and he warns his wife. What does it mean? The spirit of jealousy. My ruach, Rabbanan Amri, ruach toma, Ravashi Amar, ruach tahayra. So the Rabbanan say, you're right, you know what it means? It means the ruach of toma. Says Ravashi, no, means a ruach of tahayra. And the Gemara now explains, where does Ravashi come from? Umistavra, and this opinion of Ravashi makes a lot of sense. Command Amar, Ruach Tahira. Titania, Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael learns one is allowed. It's a rishos to warn your wife. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chayva. Rabbi Kiva says, no, it's obligatory. So, Rabbi Shlomo Ruach Tahira. Shabir. If you're going to tell me that the pasuk says that a ruach entered, it's a spiritual ruach, it's a productive thought process to warn your wife. Now it makes sense. Is it optional or is it obligatory? Ali Amred, ruach tama, but according to the first opinion, the Rabbanon that taught us in ruach tama, rishos v'chayva ali inish ruach tama benafshei. How could you learn that? It doesn't make any sense that one has permission and one has an obligation to allow this ruach tama to enter his body. So the fact that we're learning that it's either a rishos or a chayva seems to point to the fact that it is a ruach tahayra. But now that we settled that there is a potential that the ruach upon discussion is a productive, a spiritual spirit, but now the Gemara wants to delve a bit deeper into the machlekes we just quoted, whether it is a rishos, whether it's optional to warn one's wife in a situation that he suspects her, or whether it's obligatory. So Gufa says the Gemara, we're about 20-25 lines on the bottom of the Amud. The first word in line is Toma benafshei. V'kine es ishtai rishos dev Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chayva. So now, the Gemara darshins, that's case A, Lo yitama rishos dev Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chayva. Case number 2, in which we have this debate between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Kiva, is with regard to a kohen and he is becoming tamei to bury a relative. It says Lo yitama. Rabbi Yishmael says he's allowed to, and Rabbi Kiva says he has to. And case number 3, Lo lemem ta'avoidu, with regard to Eved Kanani, Rishos Rabbi Yishmael to work to Eved forever. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chayva. So 3 different cases in which Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Kiva are arguing as to whether it's obligatory or it's just permissive to do certain things that the Torah teaches us. Case of us by warning a wife, a case of a kohen becoming tami to a relative that was nifter, and a case of keeping an Eved Kanani forever. So Amr le Rav Papa Abaye Amr le Rav Mishashi le Rav le Rabbi Yishmael le Rabbi Kiva v'cholat arakula hachi pligi. Does this machlekes apply to the entirety of the Torah? Damar Amar Rishos Umar Machayva. That with regard to all the mitzvahs, they have a fundamental dispute whether it's a rishos, whether it's optional, or whether it's obligatory. And that would mean that Rabbi Yishmael is going to be holding that there's no mitzvahs asay that are absolutely mechuyavin. How could that be? So Amar Le, so Abaye responds, no. Hacha b'kroi peligi. In these 3 instances particularly, we have a machlekes how to learn up the psukim. Says the Gemara, v'kine es ishtai, this is the case by us, it says, and he warns his wife, Rishos is optional to Rabbi Yishmael, Rekiva Omer Chayva my time with Rabbi Yishmael, because he holds over lucky Aitan, he holds like the following brisa, the Tan Rabbi Lezer ben Yankov Omer Klap Eisha Amra Torah. Because the Torah says, you're not allowed to hate your friend in your heart, you're not allowed to hold a grudge. Yochel, because of that, I would think, that similarly would be in this case, that what? You're not even allowed to hate a person. If she secludes herself with another man. V'kineyes ishtoi. Says the Torah, no, that you're allowed to warn your wife. The warning of the wife is going to create a sisnas achicha, is going to create a hatred. Says Rabbi Yishmael, it's allowed, because the Torah specifies, v'avrlach ruach kina v'kinei. So the specification of the Torah is coming to counter the original isser of hating one's friend. Rabbi Akiva, what does he hold? Kinei achrina ksiva. Says Rabbi Akiva, no. There's another time the Torah uses the word kinoi, to warn, and because there's another mention of the warning in the Torah, that will make it a chayva, an obligation. Rabbi Yishmael, what does Rabbi Yishmael do with the actual word kinoi? I did the Bible lemechtav hinitma v'hiloi nitma, because the Torah had to continue in the parsha. She was tamei or not? So it said again, meaning it just for context. The Tanit Rabbi Yishmael has taught us 4 lines from the white lines. Whenever the Torah repeats an entirety of a parsha, it's not to darshan each and every word, says Rabbi Yishmael. No, it's just to teach us the one chiddush. So over there, the chiddush is not to teach us that there's a chiyuv, an obligation to warn one's wife, but rather it's teaching us that, as we've learned and as we will learn further, that in the case of Sotah, even when there's a safek, it's still going to make her usher to her husband. So this machlekes given Rabbi Yishmael is localized to this halacha of warning one's wife. Rabbi Akiva holds it's an obligation because it says kinu 2 times, and Rabbi Yishmael holds no, it is optional. The second time you're just telling this story. And we continue 2 lines from the white lines. Lo yitama. Says the Torah, the Karta Kayin Tertiary the Al become Tami, Rishus Rabbi Yishmael, Kiv Amar Chayva. Here as well, it's a localized machlekes, says the Gemara. My taima to Rabbi Yishmael. What is the reason Rabbi Yishmael that holds it is a Rishus? I did Chsev Amar Al Kayin Minei Aramat Aleim. Tell the Kayanim and say to them, Lenefesh Lo Yitama Ba'ama Vishna become Tamei. So therefore, it's of the Michtav Lo Yitama, because the Kayin should generally not become Tamei. So only over here says the Torah, no. Here you yes become Tamei. You're allowed. It's a Rishus. Rabbi Akiva says, no, Machim l'sheirei nafka. I already learned that out from the fact that Torah says, Im l'sheirei. But if it's your relative, then you could yes become tamei. So lo yitama lamali. Why does it supposed to have to specify to her you shall become tamei l'chayva? For Rabbi Yishmael, and how does he respond to those extra words? La mitamei ve'ein mitamei levareha. A din that we learned at the end of Nazir, Rabbi Yishmael holds that the din of a kohen becoming tamei is only when it's the body intact in full. But when it is only some of the limbs, then says Rabbi Yishmael, you're not allowed, the kohen is not allowed to become tamei to the limb of a relative. And he learns it out from the extra mention of la yitama. We turn over to Gilum and Beis, and the Gemara throws the ball back to Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva, how does he know that it's only the full body? He responds, Im kain, if this was true, Lechta Rachmana la v'lishtoik. Yitama lamali, Shema mina, the extra word of Yitama, says Rabbi Akiva, teaches me that there's an obligation, there's a chayva to become tamei. Rabbi Yishmael, what does he say? ID, as we saw a moment ago, ID the kasav law, kasav nami yitama. And only because he repeated the story, he repeated the litama as well. Tan very Yishmael, call parsha shenemra, and he parsha that it says v'nishtes and repeats lo nishtes ella b'shel davar sheneschad ishpa. Now we have the third case that Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva argue about 6 lines down. Gimel Amud Beis. Lo'ila ben ta'avoidu, says the Torah, you should work the Eved Kanani forever. Rishos David Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva Imer Chayva. Rabbi Akiva says no, it's an obligation. My time with Rabbi Yishmael, no, that is optional. I did because the Torah already wrote Lo yisichya kol neshama. You should not let any soul of the Kananim to live. So it's nami lemichtav lo'ila ben ta'avoidu. You would think you're not allowed to have them as avodim. Says the Torah, no, work them forever. Lemishrei echad mikol umais. And this comes to teach me that if I have someone from any of the other nations, Shabala Cananis, that is with a Cananis, a female Canani, what is the status of the child of a Canani woman and a regular guy? Say the extra La'ilam Tavoidu teaches me that if the mother is a Canani, it does not forbid keeping such a slave, but rather it goes after the father, and therefore you're allowed to require such a slave forever. The Tanya learns in a Braisa. How do we know if one of a regular guy sleeps together with a Kanani, is a female Kanani, and Vailenim and Ben, they have a child, Beved. How do you know you're allowed to purchase such a child as an Eved and there's no Isser of only the Kanani? They hadn't taken no. Those that are dwelling amongst you, from them you shall acquire. So now we think, wait, what about the opposite? Yochel, so now think of a Kanani Shabal Echem min Uma, Achas min Umais, Vel min Ben, Shatarashe Liknoisai. Maybe the same thing applies if a Kanani, a man Kanani that's with a woman of a guy, and then maybe you're allowed to acquire them. Be'avet Tamalaymar, no. Says the Torah, Asher Holidu Ba'artzachem, and Anulad Ba'artzachem Loy min Agerim Ba'artzachem. So Rishmal is learning that there's a special din from the fact that usually you have to kill out all the Kananim. But here we learn that a special chiddush that a child born from a female Kanani and a regular guy is yes allowed to be acquired. Rav Akiva argues because he holds that it's obligatory, it's a chayva to work such an eved. Mehem tiknu nafka. He learns it out from mehem tiknu, from among them you shall purchase. So there you already know the din that you're allowed to purchase such an eved. So loy leben tavaydu, we have an extra pasuk lamali lechayva of Rav Yishmael. By him he has a different Josh of loy ba'achichem and not their brothers. Rav Akiva ba'achichem yiseva dekra nafka. He learns it out from the end of the pasuk that says ba'achichem and Yisrael ish be'echav loy terdu by beparech. You should not work with terrible work. Rav Yishmael again, I declare ba'achichem ksevnami ba'hem nechtani Rav Yishmael, as we keep on seeing Rav Yishmael. Kol parshas shlemar v'nishas l'nishas el b'shvil davar shedeschad ishbas. Rav Yishmael is always going to end and teach us that the Torah always repeats it just for the chiddush of that it is, and it repeats the entire parsha. So those are the three cases that Yishmael and Rav Akiva disagree as to whether it is a reshus, says Rav Yishmael. It is optional to warn one's wife. It is optional to keep an eved. It is optional for the kohen to come tamei. Whereas Rav Akiva in all three cases says it is a chiyuv. And now we are 4 lines from the wide lines. Amar Rav Chisda teaches Rav Chisda Zanusa bebeisa bekarya Shum Shama. Adultery, zinus in the house, is like a karya word to sesame, it destroys the entire house. Statement number 1 of Rav Chisda. Statement number 2 of Rav Chisda. Tukva bebeisa. If there is anger in the house, ki karya l'shimsha, again is like sesame to this karya worm that destroys. Aidi v'aidi bisa, says the Gemara, both of these are referring to the woman. Avol begavra leslan ba. But with regard to the man, there's no problem. Not that there's no problem, but it won't go as far as to destroy the house. And we're going to see over here that the action of a woman at some level is more important within the household, as the entire house is built on the way that the woman acts in the house. V'amar Rav Chisda, we continue with Rav Chisda on the first wide line. And again, we're going to pull up a little short today, and B'siyat Shemaya tomorrow, we're going to catch up. Says Rav Chisda, originally before Klal Yisrael did any Aveirus, the Shechina would rest with each and every person. Shenemar, as the Torah teaches, Ki Hashem Elokecha Mesalech B'kerev Machanecha, within your camps. But Ki Meshachaltu Nistalku Shechina Meyan, the Shechina left. Shenemar V'lo Yirbacha Erbas Davar V'shav Me'acha Recham. And says the pasuk that the Shechina is going to no longer dwell within you, and rather will turn from behind you. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Yonis, on 4 lines into the wide lines, goes to mitzvah achas b'olam hazeh, mikadmasai v'elech lefana b'olam haba. Now that we're on the topic of zinos, of anger, of doing averos, we go into a lengthy Yagadato. Says Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, someone who's a mitzvah in this world, it goes in front of him in the next world. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, 5 lines into the wide lines. But if you do one avero, it envelops him, it wraps him up, and goes in front of him. And will be destroyed. Keshura boy kekelev, the avero is tied to him like a dog. This is by Yosef at Tzaddik. He didn't listen to Ishes by Tifar. Let's lie with her brother Mazel Yos Ima. But we see if one does commit an Aveira, it's mamish tied to him like a kelev. Tanan Asam. And we're going to stop over here, as we're going to go back now to discussion of Eidim, and then we'll go back to Maragadata in the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.